Good morning and welcome back aboard Narrowboat Gentian. It's another weekend, so it's time for another move, this time from King's Orchard Marina to Springwood Haven Marina. The sun is out, it's a little bit breezy, but it's a lovely day. I fired up the engine and waved goodbye to the lovely folk at King's Orchard Marina. It's always a pleasure stopping here. By the looks of the flag, I was in for a windy journey. And that wind was trying to push me sideways into this fiberglass cruiser, which I did see happen when I used to moor here. The number of times boats would smooch up against both this cruiser and me as they tried to come past was alarming. Marina exits are notorious for being tricky to see out of, so do beware of boats, paddleboards, kayaks or whatever crossing your path as you leave. A toot on the horn is advisable, and going slow. The journey to Springwood Haven Marina would be 21 miles 5.5 furlongs, plus 13 locks, 11 of which are in one flight at Atherstone. The Canal Plan website suggests this would take me 12.5 hours, so I plan to moor for the night somewhere just south of Polesworth, splitting the journey into 2 6-hour chunks or thereabouts. These reads show how windy it was and, handily, prevent you from seeing what's ahead, adding a tantalising twinge of tension to the trip. Luckily, the only traffic was a moorhen and a duck with its babies. Look how quickly the little ones scoot across the water. It's always worth keeping an eye out for interesting boat decorations. A lot of boats always moor here. It's almost as if there was a pub just around the corner or something. There's also a railway line. That's the pub. Here's where the Lichfield Canal comes into view. The route is under restoration, which I have documented on a couple of occasions. I'll go back for another update sometime. At the moment, it's just moorings there. The cows were queuing up for the hottest ticket in town, a scratch in the brambles. Oh, that's better. Oh, yes, right there. Oh, yes. As you continue, you come into the quiet village of Whittington, which is populated by people of extremely good taste, as they have the cutest little fiberglass cruisers, much like my own project boat, Twiggy. And look, another rather nice day boat around the corner too. I like the use of rope as a rubbing strake. I might try that. Just here, I spotted an unfortunate chap trying to retrieve some papers which had blown into the water. I did stop and try to reverse so as to help as soon as I realised what was going on, but the mere wash from my boat pushed the documents towards him, so all was well. It really is very pleasant along here. No wonder the ducks gather for their summer convention. Exiting Whittington gave evidence once again of what a windy day it was. I must say, despite many people telling me I'd be pushed about all the time by wind in a small aluminium boat, so far it really hadn't been very noticeable, or when I did feel it, much of an issue. Yes, you get a sense of being taken sideways occasionally, but it's not that hard to compensate for, just by steering into it a bit. The reeds, which grow constantly in some parts of the canal, can be a right pain, as shown here, where their height makes it a blind right bend and their intrusion leaves width only for one boat. I advanced cautiously. If I had met an oncoming craft, I could have just squidged over into the greenery for a moment while they passed. Here's a challenge for only the most dedicated, some would say worryingly so, viewer of this channel. Who can tell me why this stretch holds a particular memory for me? Answers in the comments, please. I'll give you a clue. Splosh. One thing about this boat is starting to bug me, and that's how low down the throttle control is. I often need to adjust the speed as I go along, and that lever is practically on the floor, so while I'm looking ahead at whatever I need to adjust my speed for, my left hand is flailing around trying to find it. I may have to stick a bit of pipe over the end so as to lengthen it. That would also give me more fine control over the throttle. Is it going to rain? Place your bets, ladies and gentlemen. Place your bets. I thought this was a lone swan at first, but when you get closer you spot his mate on the towpath in the undergrowth. When they have their babies with them, they get very protective, and it can be impossible for anyone to walk past without being attacked. This is a blissful spot to moor. Plenty of space, metal armco to tie up to securely, and lovely views over the fields. Wonderful. The village of Hopwas is home to some splendid woods which shade the canal as you approach and give a mystical, otherworldly feel. Plus the bird song is always spectacular. Just watch out you don't get annihilated by trespassing on the wrong bit. Coming into the village itself was slow going due to all the moored boats, but it's a pretty place, so if we care, we find we've time to stand and stare. No sniggering at the back, please, as we go under Balls Bridge. In the distance, tower blocks on the edge of Tamworth, a fairly large town to the northeast of Birmingham. The canal skirts around the centre but goes through the eastern suburbs, as you'll soon see. I'm often asked if you can hire canal boats by the day. Yes, you can. Here's a typical example, a boat packed with fun-seeking partygoers who were very amiable. What the heck is this on the horizon? That ain't no standard canal boat, that's for sure. Just before you come into Tamworth, alongside the edges near an industrial estate, there's a decent spot for mooring, and it was here I was hoping to pause for lunch. It's a bit narrow with those overhanging trees, so I was being a tad picky about where I wanted to stop. I chose here, right on the end of the Armco. Perfect. Now for some food.
It's a little bit early, only 12:30, but this is a nice spot to stop for a spot of lunch, I think. It is the inevitable cheese sandwich, cup of tea, and then I can just press on all the way through until I get to my destination for today, which hopefully will be just below Atherston Lock Flight. I've had my lunch and I'm all set to head off, and then at the exact moment I start thinking, let's go, a boat comes past heading my direction. I think, well, I don't want to sit up their backside, as it were, so I'll give it a couple of seconds. Another one comes past. I think, all right, that's two. Another one comes past. Six so far come past. I'm just looking to see if there's another one going to come past, because we're all going to be in a queue if I set off now.
And whilst it's fine in a way to follow other boats, I always feel as though they'll feel I'm wanting to overtake, which usually I'm not. So I waited, and eventually the rush hour petered out and I could set off. Of course, rush is really the most inappropriate word.
I'd consider going a tad faster, but I can see one boat ahead of me is only, 300 yards ahead. And we know there's the 6 that came past earlier, and if they're all heading for Glasgow Locks, there's just going to be a massive queue. So I might as well idle along and enjoy the view. And I'm pleased to say the sun has come out. It's nice again.
And then, in that classic British weather way, it wasn't. It is but a stone's throw from that mooring until you approach Fazeley Junction, where the Birmingham and Fazeley Canal spurs off this one and goes into Birmingham. This is not that spur, this is just a mooring basin. I would not be going to Birmingham, though I have done it before. I'll leave a link to those videos in the YouTube description. This services point is now, alas, closed, but there's another tap 100 yards further along at the junction itself. I've been commenting on people's bow ornaments all along this journey, and take a look at this corker. The rooftop is also worth a browse. Equally eye-catching is this gorgeous tug with, no doubt, a classic engine inside. Ahead, wall painting I do approve of, and shocking to see it remain unvandalised. There's the junction, which takes you into Brum. Carrying straight on, I recall there was an underwater obstruction when I last came through this, though that was several years ago. Let us see how I fare this time round, slowly. Phew, no problem. So onwards through Fazeley and the Tameside Nature Reserve, heading towards Glasgow. Where the canal narrows here is an aqueduct over a river. To the side, another pillbox from World War II, built in case of German invasion. Armoured battle narrowboats, can you imagine? The river below is the Tame, from which Tamworth gets its name. The town was the capital of the Mercian Kingdom until it was demolished by the Vikings in 874. It regained that status in 913 when the Vikings were sent packing. The Vikings, incidentally, used longboats, which is not how we describe narrowboats, even though they are long and boats. And don't call them barges either, thank you very much. Under the busy A5 dual carriageway, and the 2 locks at Glasgow are not far off. Before those, though, the mildest of mild hazards, a tree down across part of the canal. Moored at Tamworth Cruising Club, look, it's another sea otter. Up ahead, those locks I just mentioned. As expected, a short queue due to all the boats that had gone past earlier. I pulled up and took my position at the end like a good boater. We should all carry a sign that says "Lock queue starts here" to put up when we're at the end. It might save some misunderstandings.
Well, the boat ahead of me is a 36-footer, and I'm 26, and we're both going to fit in the lock together. So this will be a first.
So, after a short wait, in went the very pleasant couple on the 30-footer, and I followed. It's not the first time I've joined another boat in a single lock. That honour goes to my cabin cruiser Twiggy when I moved it to Stourport, but this is the first time I've done 2 narrowboats sharing. It was ideal, in fact. Plenty of room both at the front and the back of the lock, and we eased our way up nice and gently.
Well, that worked fantastically. I shall try to do that again in future.
Lock 1 done, we repeated the process for the second. Above the lock is another water point, which is bizarrely on the top lock landing, making it really awkward to do the lock solo if someone stopped for water. Then you go past Glasscote Basin, apparently built as a coal depot and transit hub for an engineering works based here in the 1800s. From here on, it's a fairly straight run through urban housing towards Alvercote. That's if we make it in one piece after being attacked by the violently aggressive trees. Look what's on the other side. Another sea otter. This one a 26-footer just like mine, I think. Onwards through Glasscote. At Alvercote you find another historic basin on the left, and a marina largely full of vintage boats on the right. I don't know why, but owners of old working narrowboats all seem to moor here. By this point you're heading out of Tamworth and briefly back into the countryside, before going south towards Polesworth, which was my destination for the evening. This may have been a bridge at one point. Here I realised I was being pursued and caught up by a hire boat, but I wanted to find a suitable place to drop into idle in order for them to pass. That meant somewhere straight and wide. This eventually happened, and, as is always the way, they said they were about to stop anyway, so we might just as well have both carried on.
Alright. We're going to stop in a minute anyway, go for a walk. Yeah.
I'm planning a new series, When Trees Attack. At last I reached Polesworth, and now needed to find somewhere to moor. I see a lot of ducks, swans and moorhens, but geese in the canal, that are not the Canadian ones, is unusual. And not one, but two.
I did have a plan. a long time ago, in other words this morning, that I might try and go up the first couple of Atherstone locks and moor there, but it's almost 5 o'clock. It's another 2, possibly 3 miles to the locks, and I really want a cup of tea, so I'm just going to find a nice place in the countryside and stop.
Every spot in Polesworth itself was already taken, so I had to carry on. For canal nerd interest, here's one of the many overflow spillways that takes excess water from the canal, usually down to a stream or river below. Just outside Polesworth, I found an isolated place on a corner which looked ideal. It's very tranquil, although there is a railway line right there, but weirdly, I find the whooshing sound of the trains overnight particularly pleasing as I snooze. Yes, this racket. Thanks for watching. Cheerio.